From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Estefania Bravo. This is From the South. The former president of Ecuador, Rafael Correa, has sharply criticized the current government for handing over the WikiLeaks founder, Julian Assange, to the British police. Speaking to Telesur, Correa said President Lenín Moreno is following orders from the U.S.
Last year, Moreno met with U.S. Vice President Mike Pence, with whom he agreed on 3 issues. Isolating Venezuela as they have done, giving impunity to Chevron, a company that destroyed half of the Ecuadorian jungle, and handing Julian Assange to the authorities. They tried to break Julian Assange, to isolate him, to break him psychologically, but he resisted. But the final straw was that WikiLeaks published information about the president and his family, linking them to corruption cases.
After being expelled from the Ecuadorian embassy, a UK judge found Julian Assange guilty of skipping bail. Now the WikiLeaks founder faces up to 12 months in prison. He could also spend a maximum of 5 years in prison in the US on charges of conspiring to gain access to a government's computer. The WikiLeaks founder was arrested by the British police after Ecuador abruptly ended 7 years of asylum. Assange is now likely facing extradition to the US, but his legal team has vowed to fight those proceedings. Supporters of Julian Assange gathered outside of the magistrate's court, which he was taken to. The crowd could be heard chanting, "Free Julian Assange." Solidarity protests are also being held outside of the Ecuadorian embassy, where Assange was arrested earlier today. The editor-in-chief of WikiLeaks also spoke to reporters, saying the United States' interest in Assange stems from WikiLeaks' exposure of the war crimes and the killing of innocent civilians by the U.S. military. He said Assange is being charged with conspiracy to commit journalism and that extradition to the U.S. must be averted.
This is a dark day for journalism. As Jennifer said, this sets a precedent. We don't want this to go forward. This has to be averted. The UK government needs to make a full assurance that a journalist will never be extradited to the United States for publishing activity. This pertains to publishing work 9 years ago. Publishing of documents, of videos of killing of innocent civilians, exposure of war crimes. This is journalism. It's called conspiracy. It's conspiracy to commit journalism. So this has to end, and we urge everybody to support Julian Assange in fighting his extradition.
One of Assange's lawyers, Baltasar Garzón, has said he fears Assange could risk torture if he is extradited to the U.S. Garzón also said that the arguments given by the Ecuadorian government to put an end to his asylum are false.
Chelsea Manning was subjected to torture, as a special reporter on torture, Juan Mendez, revealed at the time. So we think it is the same case, and we have serious and founded reasons for thinking this could happen. In any case, those guarantees were not given. There are some previous cases, as we have indicated before, the Inter-American Commission for Human Rights, in which Great Britain has extradited people without those guarantees. Therefore, we will wait, because luckily we are waiting for justice in Great Britain to speak when he has to, now that the extradition process begins. We are very worried because the Ecuadorian government, and its new president in particular, did not tell the truth in the statement he made. This is serious for the institutional position and the respect for Ecuadorian people and their institutions. The reasons given for the expulsion of Julian Assange, for the termination of the asylum, are not true.
And Jennifer Robinson, another of Assange's lawyers, confirmed that the U.S. has made an extradition request and that the move sets a dangerous precedent for press freedom. During her brief statement outside of the Westminster Magistrates Court, she also said that Assange is grateful for all the support he is receiving.
Since 2010, we've warned that Julian Assange would face prosecution and extradition to the United States for his publishing activities with WikiLeaks. Unfortunately, today we've been proven right. Mr. Assange was arrested this morning at about 10 o'clock at the Ecuadorian embassy after the ambassador formally notified him that his asylum would be revoked, and he was arrested by British police. We've today received a warrant and a provisional extradition request from the United States alleging that he has conspired with Chelsea Manning in relation to the materials that were published by WikiLeaks in 2010. This sets a dangerous precedent for all media organisations and journalists in Europe and elsewhere around the world. This precedent means that any journalist can be extradited for prosecution in the United States for having published truthful information about the United States. I've just been with Mr. Assange in the police cells. He wants to thank all of his supporters for their ongoing support, and he said, "I told you so."
Ecuador's Foreign Minister José Valencia has explained the reasons for revoking Assange's asylum during a press conference. Valencia accused Assange of interfering with the external affairs of foreign states, disrespecting Ecuador, and using his asylum status to evade justice. The Foreign Minister also said that between 2012 and 2018, Ecuador spent more than $5 million on security services and more than $400,000 on food and medical expenses.
The decision of the President is supported by international law and in our sovereign right to concede or not an asylum status, but also in the fact that Mr. Assange violated certain regulations that apply to the diplomatic asylum status and the protocol of cohabitation in our embassy.
Earlier, José Valencia also appeared in the National Assembly to speak about the case. Our correspondent, Denise Herrera, was there and sent us this report.
Hello, we are outside the National Assembly in Quito, where recently the Foreign Minister of Ecuador, José Valencia, explained on the situation of Julian Assange inside the Embassy of Ecuador in London. He said that the Ecuadorian government took that decision in accordance with the law. Also, recently, the former Foreign Minister of Ecuador, Ricardo Patiño, together with the Citizen Revolution movement, rejected the announcement of the Ecuadorian authorities. Ricardo Patiño denied the allegation against him that he is working with Russian hackers. This decision taken by the Ecuadorian government also was rejected by the defense team of Julian Assange in Ecuador. The lawyer Carlos Poveda rejected the decision and also said that they will take action to protect Julian Assange.
We thank Denise Herrera for that report. And the Minister of the Interior, Maria Paula Romo, accused Ecuador's former Foreign Minister Ricardo Patiño of working with WikiLeaks to destabilize the government. She said that there was evidence that Patiño had traveled to various countries with two Russian hackers who now live in Ecuador and who are close to Julian Assange. Ricardo Patiño has flatly rejected these accusations.
I want to say I don't know any Russian hackers. The only Russians I know are President Putin, his foreign minister and the vice minister. I've never met a hacker, and if I don't know them, it's impossible for me to have travelled with them. The minister, Maria Paula Romo, says these hackers are trying to destabilise the government. But no one needs a hacker to destabilise a government that's doing that all on its own.
Patiño also called for Ecuadorians to join a national demonstration against the government of Lenín Moreno and the arrest of Assange.
We have taken a decision to call for a national demonstration on Tuesday 16th to denounce this abuse of our sovereignty, of human rights, of international conventions and our dignity. We call for all Ecuadorians to join this demonstration, to take to the streets to express our outrage about what was done today.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. Another social leader has been killed in Colombia in the southern department of Cauca. Policarpo Guzman was shot 10 times in an area where paramilitary groups have a strong presence. He left the municipality of Argelia after receiving several threats, but came back with his family 2 years ago. He was the founder of the Campesino Association of Workers of Algeria and led several demonstrations in defense of human rights. The National Liberation Army in Colombia has announced a ceasefire during Holy Week. In a statement shared by Colombian Senator Ivan Cepeda, the armed group says the unilateral ceasefire will start this Sunday, April 14th, and will last until Easter Sunday. According to Cepeda, this is a step towards peace that should be valued by President Iván Duque. Colombia's Attorney General has revealed that the construction of the Hidroituango mega dam on the Cauca River is having devastating effects on the fauna, flora, and residents in the region. Néstor Humberto Martínez's report shows that the Medellín Energy Company, EPM, in charge of the dam, hasn't taken any measures to attend several emergencies. This includes, among other issues, an asphalt factory that was abandoned and has become a health hazard for the community, with poisonous chemicals leaking into nearby waters.
We have decided to request preventive measures to protect life, the vital minimum, the ecosystem in this area of the Cauca River.
Moving on, Mexico's President Andrés Manuel Lopez Obrador has appointed Army General Luis Rodriguez to head the country's new National Guard. The National Guard will initially be made up of military police and members of the federal police. Critics is warning that the new body poses a risk and could permanently militarize the country. But Lopez Obrador says the National Guard is essential to tackle the country's all-time high crime rate.
That is the change we want to make. Defending human rights and the regulated use of force in the process.
Former President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski has been detained for 10 days and will be investigated in a money laundering case. Our correspondent has the latest details from Lima, Peru.
The former president, Pedro Pablo Kuczynski, was detained after a judge issued an arrest warrant alleging that he might play a role in blocking a corruption investigation against him. His lawyers have denied any wrongdoing.
There are no proofs against our client that show he is involved in this corruption case. His defense has produced various arguments in different hearings. Right now we are evaluating his detention order.
According to the prosecutor's office, when Kuczynski was the economy minister during the government of Alejandro Toledo between 2005 and 2006, he favored the Brazilian construction company Odebrecht in public contracts for the construction of infrastructure across the country.
At that time, his company Westfield Capital was providing services to Odebrecht in some of the public contracts. The prosecutor says that his company was not providing any service, but in fact was covering up for bribery that he received along with other ministers working in the same administration.
In those transactions, Kuczynski allegedly received $1 million in bribe from Odebrecht. People have reacted to his arrest.
This should have happened a long time ago. I am surprised that this took so long to happen.
Every public official, regardless of what political party they belong to, should be arrested.
They are really hurting him. I think the judiciary should think that he's 80 years old, a senior citizen.
Pedro Pablo Kuczynski will remain in the police station for 10 days. Within that time, the prosecution will be able to ask the court to file an arrest order for him to remain in jail for 36 months in a preventive detention.
Science and technology professionals and students in Argentina are protesting against budget cuts. The science and technology sector has been suffering from growing budget cuts in recent years. Researcher salaries have decreased along with the number of positions offered by the National Council of Scientific and Technical Research. In 2015, the council opened around 900 positions, but this number fell to half in 2018. A new ride-sharing app is now providing service to remote areas of Sao Paulo, unlike other similar services. After realizing Uber doesn't go to the favelas, where some 265,000 people live, Albimar Silva created his own ride-sharing service to help them. Since 2017, some 50 drivers have registered. Da Silva hopes to expand his business to other risky areas of the city.
We on the outskirts are completely forgotten. With Jobra, everything improved. We thought about we go everywhere, especially at night. Our children can go to a dance, a party, a birthday. Today it's a lot easier.
And Argentinian taxi drivers have taken to the streets of Buenos Aires to protest against Uber as the company prepares to file an initial public offering. Uber is expected to sell around $10 billion worth of stocks. Buenos Aires lacks specific regulations for Uber. Taxi unions say Uber drivers steal away customers with competitive fares. This April 11th marks 17 years since the coup attempt that wanted to overthrow Hugo Chavez in 2002. Let's see more in this report.
This is the Jaguno Bridge in Caracas. This monument commemorates that 17 years ago, this was the state of a bloody scene in the context of the state coup against Hugo Chavez. Today, this is a frequent spot for Chavista concentrations, or signifying it as a spot of resistance and tribune of the Bolivarian project.
There is a great and motivated spirit of defense for this nation. We are victims of a permanent aggression that doesn't stop, because there is a clear goal to put an end to Venezuela's democracy and revolution.
The scenes of the 11th and 13th of April of 2002 remain inside the memory of Venezuelans. On one side, tragic because of the deaths it provoked, and on the other side, heroic because of the revolutionary spontaneity that achieved to restore Chavez with thousands of manifestations in the streets.
Chavez spread the passion, the freedom, the future, the history. All the people defended Chavez. Time, days, distance didn't matter. Distance became short because it was about Chavez.
The Venezuelan people had an apprenticeship derived from popular revolts as the Caracazo from 1989 or the first coup attempt of Chavez in 1992, even the electoral triumph of 1998 and the coup of 2002. Historic events of recent history that forged the actual process.
Since Maduro took office after Chavez's death, all the anti-democratic forces had a false impression that perhaps the government is weak now, so they are at their boiling point at the moment.
Also, the threat of a foreign military intervention reaffirms a transversal rejection, even regarding the economical problems of the country.
I think that now there are Chavistas who are resisting the appeasement by the opposition, despite the crisis.
17 years have passed, and more or less evident the shadow of a coup always awaits.
That's actually a majority that says no to the violation of the Constitution, that doesn't want an invasion, that wants peace instead, and that also want our democracy and our Constitution to be respected.
Chavez left, but he remains inside all of us, and we continue to maintain the same strength. In the hardest situation, we have supported our President Maduro, and we also say this revolution will never end.
In 2019, the Bolivarian government confronts various coup attempts, but the popular forces assume again the protagonism to defend their process.
Trinidad and Tobago's veteran singer Calypso Rose is the oldest artist and the first Calypsonian to ever perform at Coachella, one of the world's biggest music and art festivals. Born Linda McCarthy Sandy Lewis, the 78-year-old trailblazer has broken down barriers for women in Calypso and other Caribbean genres. She also uses her platform to champion the rights of women and speak out against gender violence. Calypso Rose will take to the Coachella stage on the weekends of April 12th and 19th.
It's a very great album. I am not a reporter to say I'm going with my pen and paper to take news and to go and think, but I am a reporter in song. I have seen so many things that are happening in the world. I love you all.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. Sudan's Defense Minister Awad Mohamed Ahmed Im-Au will head the Military Transitional Council that will run the country for 2 years until elections are held. He was sworn in by the head of the judiciary at a ceremony that was broadcasted on national television. The ceremony took place as thousands of people remained on the streets protesting against the takeover by the military. The Sudanese Professionals Association has also rejected a takeover by the military. A tweet by the association urged citizens to reject any exercise which is short of an outright democratic transition. They have since urged the masses to continue protesting until democracy is restored. The association was key in organizing the protests against the post-president Omar al-Bashir. But the government has warned of stern action against any protesters that will be found on the streets during the curfew hours, which were announced earlier.
The armed forces are drawing your attention to that the curfew begins tonight at 10 p.m. until 4 a.m. Citizens are advised to stick to it for their safety, and due to the dangers associated with not adhering to the curfew that has been from 10 to 4, the armed forces would like to draw citizens' attention to be careful, as the armed forces and the Security Council will carry out its duty to uphold peace and security and protect citizens' livelihoods.
Meanwhile, the National Intelligence and Security Service announced the release of all political prisoners across the country on Thursday. The announcement came after Sudanese sources said President Omar al-Bashir had been forced to step down after 3 decades in power. There was jubilation in the streets as people celebrated the release of the activist. Pope Francis has urged South Sudan's President Salva Kiir and former Vice President Riek Machar to respect the peace deal they signed last year in Ethiopia. Speaking during a meeting at the Vatican with the South Sudanese leaders, the Pope said the two leaders have the responsibility to ensure that the peace agreement is implemented. South Sudan, which broke away from Sudan in 2011, plunged into civil war in 2013 between government forces and forces loyal to Machar.
Dear brothers and sisters, peace is possible. I shall never tire of repeating this. Peace is possible, yet this great gift of God is at the same time a supreme duty and a part of those with responsibility for the people.
The internationally recognized government of Libya has announced the capture of almost 200 fighters belonging to Field Marshal Khalifa Haftar's Libyan National Army. Government officials said the fighters were captured on the outskirts of Tripoli as Haftar's forces attempted to take over the city. However, a spokesperson for Haftar's forces has denied having any of their soldiers captured. Police in South Africa have used tear gas and rubber bullets to disperse angry protesters in an informal township on the outskirts of Cape Town. The residents are protesting against what they are calling the exorbitant cost of electricity and water. They say most of the residents are unable to afford the bills due to the high levels of unemployment in the area. They have also threatened to boycott next month's national elections due to the neglect of the area by elected officials. Finland is breaking the ice on climate change ahead of Sunday's parliamentary elections. A political debate between all main Finnish political parties has been held on a rotating disc of ice. The aim of the stunt in Helsinki was to shift the focus of political discussion about climate change from individuals towards choices made at the political level. Finland will also take over the rotating presidency of the European Union from July. And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We're on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.